We have big news. We have exciting news for you. Tell them what it is, Serena.
We are super excited to announce that we are starting our first membership this January 2024.
Yay! Membership.
So we're excited to let you know that we will be hosting a monthly membership where when you join, you will be
with us live in a Zoom room once a month for a workshop like we just hosted. It's going to be a workshop like that, one topic each month, a different topic. You might even help us come up with the following month's topic from inside our membership. Super excited to meet you. It was so fun meeting a few of you in our inaugural workshop. So we're really looking forward to that.
And when you are a member, you will also be receiving a monthly newsletter where I'm going to be a little more intimate and I'll be sharing the things that are working and the things that aren't working for me.
Yeah, like taking a tool that you've learned from the podcast and how you're implementing it and how well that worked, or maybe if it didn't work. And then Amma can put in my 2 bits worth. We'll see how that goes. But a membership newsletter and a membership live Zoom room workshop starting in January 2024. Can sign up through our Patreon link in the show notes, yeah?
Yes, everything will be in the show notes, and we can't wait to see you there, listeners.
We can't wait. Yay!
Hey mamas, welcome back to another episode here at The Nurturing Parent. And today we want to thank Kenzie and Jen for our episode because one of our listeners, Kenzie, came to us with a concern she had about setting boundaries when moving in with her boyfriend and his 4-year-old that he has full custody of. So Kenzie, as such a caring, unselfish, really aware and cautious woman, came to us with this question, wanting to make sure that she truly makes her future stepdaughter feel the most comfortable. And we think that is so sweet of you, Kenzie. So thank you for reaching out to us. And thank you, Jen, from Bold and Blended Stepmoms, for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge to help Kenzie in her situation. So I also wanted to add that this is not only for people that, or mothers that are stepmoms. I think this applies to any parenting duo to make sure that you are in alignment and that you have the same expectations for each other as parents. So this is just a healthy foundation for any relationship, really, when you are becoming parents. So thank you, Jen, for having this conversation with us. Thank you for your wealth of knowledge, and thank you for being such a beautiful person and doing the work that you do. And thank you, Kenzie, for being so caring and cautious, and you're going to be an amazing stepmom. I know it. Let's get into it.
Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Do you want to end the constant battles for bath time? Do you find yourself emotionally exhausted at the end of the day? Do you wake up with big hopes for a smooth day of fun with your little ones, only to face an early morning meltdown because you peeled their banana the wrong way?
Silly you.
Silly you.
Hey, I'm Serena. I am a mama of 2 little ones, and as a new mama, I constantly questioned myself. I wanted to make sure I was raising respectful kids while also building a strong bond with them. But I discovered that I had to unlearn my ideas that punishment was the way. With Lisa's encouragement, I've been practicing a respectful and gentle parenting approach, which is strengthening our bond as a family.
And hi, I'm Lisa. Amma means grandmother in Icelandic. I am a mama and an Amma. And I have over 40 years of experience in childcare and parent coaching. And I am so excited to share the knowledge I've gained over these years with you.
Together in this podcast, each week we will explore some easy to implement skills you can add to your parenting tool belt to help you create a happy, thriving family. Today, we are excited to introduce you to Jen Rogers, our next guest here on the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Jen is coming to us today from Missouri and as the creator and host of the Bold and Blended Stepmoms podcast. Jen is a chief encourager, a pastor's wife, a mom, and a stepmom of 2 girls, 2 boys, and 2 pups.
and a Gigi to 4 grandchildren. She is also a certified professional life coach, a #1 Amazon best-selling author, a podcaster, an atomic habits guru, and a pickleball lover. After becoming a stepmom, Jen struggled with a major identity crisis as a woman. She was disheartened to discover that her new husband and she were completely out of sync when it came to his kids, and she didn't know what to do. After struggling for years as a stepmom, Jen is now on a mission to guide women on the very necessary steps to take to prevent stepmom burnout, to stop walking on eggshells, and to end second wife imposter syndrome, and to learn to co-parent successfully with their stepchildren's parents. Welcome, Jen, and thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today. It's so nice to have you.
Oh my gosh, I am so honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so excited. All right. Well, we reached out to Jen because we had a listener write in telling us that she is about to move in with her boyfriend, who is a solo dad. Some of her questions were about how to be an empowered stepmom, but not a harsh one. Because we know that step parenting can be a whole new ball of wax in the realm of parenting, bringing in some often complicated and challenging dynamics. We wanted to create a podcast for all of you who are step parents or are considering moving into that situation. To start us off, let's look at our listeners' situation. Kenzie wrote, I am in a relationship with an amazing man who is a solo dad of an extremely intelligent, talented, spicy 4-year-old, and I'm moving in with them in July. I don't have any kids of my own, but am so excited to grow our little family within the next few years. My partner and I have taken things slowly, which I feel very good about. We both have the same views on parenting, such as allowing his daughter to express and feel her feelings and teaching her right from wrong in a safe, non-threatening environment. I'm looking forward to seeing them both daily and also helping my partner. He has her full time and I can see the burnout. I see that she definitely tests what she can and can't do. I see my partner give in at times, and I'm curious, when would the right time be for me to set boundaries and tell her what behavior is allowed and what's not? I also know I don't want to be a quote unquote negative in her life. So I'm nervous I will word things wrong or that I might react like my parents used to. I grew up in a very aggressive, reactive environment and know that it is not the way I want to parent. As a step parent figure and someone coming into her space, I don't want to make her uncomfortable in any way, but finding the right words for setting boundaries with my dog walking and boarding business, for example, is something I'm struggling with. That's an overview of our listener, Kenzie, and what she wrote to us about. And we are going to pass that over to you, Jen.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, let's start out with the alliteration of kudos to Kenzie, shall we?
Yes.
She has
Yes.
done such a great job in spotting some things that can create trouble later down the road. So I'm going to list them so we can all catch them and focus on that. Kenzie is entering her stepdaughter's space. So she's going into a place that her stepdaughter has known one way and it's about to change into a new way. So that's a great catch right there. And Kenzie sees the intelligence, the talent, and yep, that spiciness of her stepdaughter. And she is celebrating that. Yeah, I want to meet her, don't you?
Yes. Kenzie and the spicy 4-year-old.
That's right. That's right. And Kenzie knew that taking things slower in her relationship with her boyfriend was in the interest of his daughter. So it's a very unselfish thing to do. And she also has great personal awareness of how she wants to show up, including avoiding the childhood experiences that may test her when things get tense or messy. Because, well, family is spelled MESSY, is it not?
That's right. I like that.
Yeah. Love is spelled TIME, but family is MESSY for sure. So I wanted to offer some practical advice for any woman in Kenzie's shoes. So I'll start there, and then I'm going to offer some specific things up for Kenzie. Since she took the time to write into the show, I definitely want to address those specific things for her. So first, here are some basic things to think about when you are about to blend, when you are the stepmom. So I'm speaking to the stepmom here, but know that if you are the stepdad, the same kind of questions, maybe with a little twist, could apply to you. Number one, you will be uncomfortable. Number two, your stepkids will be uncomfortable. Number three, the family culture will change. And I'll state the obvious here, but change is a constant, whether you're in a blended family or not, because everybody's growing and learning and changing. And so we get to choose, how are we going to pivot to that person's change? Number four, prior experiences of the kids will impact how they see you. Just like Kenzie is bringing in her own, oh, I have this thing, how I grew up that I have a concern about. Those kids in the family, they will have concerns too for the new person coming into the family. Number five.
Can I interject there with a little question?
Yes.
So they will have their own, how did you say that? Their own
prior experiences.
Okay. So in other words, if the daughter here has had prior experiences with her mom or another woman figure, then those experiences she might come to this relationship with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even when we all showed up here today, we came on with a certain expectation, one that we would show up. Now, your kids may not show up when you tell them it's time to come down for breakfast. We know they may not show up. So it may be a little different situation, but for sure, we show up with a certain set of expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, then that's when the fallout happens.
Okay.
Okay. So number five, comparison kills. And the kids will compare you to what they know regularly. And the comparisons will often spill out of their mouths and hurt you. Thick skin is required, especially at first. And of course, depending on the ages of the kids as well, that it depends on how honest they are, whether they've gotten good at the cover-up game or not, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one, this has several parts to it. So again, for anybody who may be coming into a blending situation, you as a person coming in are not anyone's savior, not your man's and not your kids. And I mention this because Kenzie recognized that her boyfriend was experiencing some burnout, but navigating that burnout is really for him to express what his expectations are for the new family dynamics. So whether your guy is dealing with burnout or whatever the situation is, you're not coming in to rescue anybody. You're coming in to blend, and it's going to take some time.
That's a really, really good point.
Okay.
I think not rushing, but coming into any new relationship, come on. Maybe I don't think I'm the only one, but as women, we tend to have that. I'll come in as the nurturer, as the fixer, as the make it better person, right? And in a blended family. Right. Yeah.
Well, and that's what your podcast is called. You are nurturers, right?
Yes. That's right.
Okay, so let's see. 1, 2, 3. I came up with 6 things to consider as you're blending together. Just some basic things to throw out. And I want to be really practical here. This is not some theoretical, oh, if you just think about these long enough, things are going to get better. No. Here, try these things instead. So here are some questions to ask. Who's making dinner? Who's doing the laundry? What are the bedtime routines? How will we preserve our relationship? Will we have date night? Will we continue to date each other? How do the custody exchanges work? Like, who's doing what when? Am I responsible for any of that? Is that all on you? Does it change? And then is his daughter's mom allowed in their home? So what free reign, if you will, does that other biological parent have in the home that you're entering into? Because that'll shake some things up. So those are
Mhm.
just some things to consider for anybody who finds himself in Kenzie's situation. So I could come up with a bunch more, but those are some main ones to think about.
Mhm. And so I guess depending on the age of the children, those things all would be very different too. If you've got older children, hopefully they're doing some of the laundry duty, some of the tidy up, some of the kitchen chores, all that kind of thing, right? And then with a younger one or ones, there might not be as much of the household chores being done by others, but still good for new mom and dad combo, stepmom and dad, to be figuring that out, right?
That's right. And they are good conversations to have up front. I know your listener subscribed to get some questions to ask her partner about blending together. And these are some of the questions that are on there so that
Mm-hmm.
you can have some what seems like obvious conversations. I'll give you an example that when I married my husband, we'll be married for 9 years in August now. And I realized about 4 years in, I didn't even know his favorite color. It's so weird.
Oh.
But we didn't develop that way. We came in wounded. We came in wounded and blending families together. But there were a lot of things that I didn't know about him. And it felt so awkward because we would be out to dinner somewhere and he would meet somebody that he knew and they'd be talking about their past and it'd be funny. And I would feel like the odd woman out. What? I don't know any of that. And then I would get angry with him because he didn't tell me about that. But how could he know to tell me about that? Because we don't think about it. I didn't even know what his favorite color was. Blending can be really, really awkward.
And part of that, I think, too, is because you're just both so busy. I mean, you're not only creating a new relationship, which takes a lot of time and energy, but you've got children, and in your case, on both sides. And
Right.
so all the different relationships and, doing all your daily, getting kids to school or daycare or out to the park or whatever it is that you have to do with everybody. Like, it's just, I can understand why there wasn't time for finding out what his favorite color was.
Right.
It's
That's
a
right.
lot of time and energy already spent.
That's
Uh-huh.
right. And you mentioned what you mentioned had me thinking about the normal routines, how many things we do on autopilot. So, when you drive somewhere and then you ask yourself, wait, how did I get here? I don't remember the route. Surely we can all relate to that. It's the same when you come together that you don't even realize all the stuff that you do without thinking. What toothpaste you use, how you actually sort your laundry, whether or not you eat breakfast. I mean, these are some things that you just take for granted because you say, hey, I'm an adult, I'm a grown up, I know what to do. And you make a lot of assumptions. But when you come in, the family members that are there, when they have different routines and different norms, they just
Mm,
think you're really odd. And you can be a threat as well
yeah.
because you're threatening their routine.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially with little ones, because it can be something so simple like I use this certain plate to give you your breakfast every morning. And then if, say, a stepmom comes in who didn't know that that's her breakfast plate and may serve her lunch plate and put her breakfast on it, like
With
that could be bad.
a lot of our listeners have very young children. And so we in our intro, we say, and you peeled her banana the wrong way. And it's just a morning meltdown, right? So it's like all those details.
Yeah.
And what I came to when you were just speaking there, Jen, was when we come together as a couple and you move in together as a couple, you sort of go, oh, because I remember this last boyfriend that I had a few years ago. It was like, you use that soap? Like, I have sensitivities to
Mhm.
scented products, so I'm going to need you to change soaps. And he's like, what? We weren't
Uh-huh.
living together, but even staying with him, or even if he just washed his hands, it was like, oh no, stay away from me. So even those little details, right? And I
Mhm.
never thought about that in this realm of becoming a blended family where there's all the different people. Like in this family with Kenzie, we're talking about three entities, one of them being very young And, she has her routines. And we've talked on the podcast a number of times about how important routines are for children, gives them a sense of safety, a sense of security. And if you come in and, you're making her favorite breakfast, but like Serena says, you serve it to her on her lunch plate, that might not go down well. And you might be in
That's
really
right.
big trouble with that little 4-year-old for a moment.
That's right. As Serena was sharing that, I was thinking, or worse yet, you actually eat off that favorite plate. And
Yeah, or you serve it to somebody else. You serve it to your stepsister now.
That's right. That's
Oh
right.
my goodness.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
definitely are a lot of little pieces. And I appreciate what you said about the consistency of routines and knowing that with littles, that is critical to their success. So for Kenzie or anybody else in this particular situation, Brett, what a great question to ask. What are the routines that are important for your children? And then if you're bringing children in, then you can share, these are the routines that are important for my children, for example. Maybe you've got a bathroom hog and maybe you've got one who never takes a shower. You need to share some of what these things are so that you have an idea and appreciation for what you might be facing when you come together.
Very good.
I grew up with my parents separated at a young age, and honestly, I had a really bad experience with my blending process. What happened when my dad got remarried, and that was really bad for me. I was in elementary school. It was pretty tough. I had to end up moving in with my mother instead. And so I love the work that you do, because becoming a stepmom can be extremely uncomfortable for the stepmom, for the child, and the work that you're doing to help families be able to create a happy home in this process is so beneficial to so many families, because it's so tricky to navigate.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so sorry for your hurt in blending. And I know hearing those stories from kids in the trenches, whether or not you're a step parent, is really helpful for us to understand the insights of mind of the way that kids think, because you mentioned not managing emotions very well. Also expressing how they're feeling. I'm mad or I'm angry, or maybe they've been forbidden to express their emotions. And so then they're even more tangled up inside because they're mad about being mad. And they can't express it, kind of thing. So yeah, it is really, really tricky. When you were talking, go ahead.
That's just a really big one for me, with the one parent being really comfortable with a child expressing their emotions and acknowledging the emotions. We talk about this a lot also on the podcast often. And then coming in where a new step parent is like, no, don't talk to me about being pissed off at your teacher. That's inappropriate. It's like, really? Because that's a totally different way of being now. So that whole piece of how are you with the feelings that are going to come up? How are you going to best deal with and acknowledge or not acknowledge? How's that going to go? That piece there is really big for me, I think.
And you said it's a different state of being. Oh my word. That sums up blending. It's a different state of being.
Yes.
Well, is it okay if we go back and share some thoughts about what Kenzie could specifically do in her situation?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Okay. And I want to give her stepdaughter a name. It's so weird to keep talking about her, the stepdaughter. So I'm going to call her Sarah. So Kenzie, no offense if her name is not Sarah. I actually hope it really is Sarah. That would be totally cool. But I'm just going to assume that she has a name of Sarah. So, Kenzie, here are some questions that I have for you to consider as you're getting ready to create this new family with your boyfriend. What specifically is the struggle regarding boundaries for your business? So earlier on in the write-up, when Amelisa was reading about what she was struggling with, there was a generalization there of, I'm struggling with these boundaries. And I know, because I love your podcast, I listened to episode number 69 on boundaries. So first off, I guess, Kenzie, go listen to that one, and that'll give you some parameters for boundaries. But what specifically is the struggle regarding the boundaries? So if you were to create a list of concerns you have, focus only on one aspect for each of them. What are you concerned about? So, for example, when clients arrive with their dogs, I don't want the dogs to attack Sarah. Yeah, I don't want the dogs to attack your daughter, Sarah. Or Sarah has so much energy and bravado. The safest place for her to be when the dogs are boarding is fill in the blank, whatever she would think would be the safest place. And then say, I'm concerned about whatever she might be concerned about. It could be, I'm concerned she will disobey. Another one could be prepping multiple dogs for a walk is chaotic, and the dogs are often overly anxious. I'm afraid the dogs will trample Sarah. So as she takes the time, so Kenzie, as you're listening to this, if you take the time to specifically identify each thing that you have a concern about, then you can go to your boyfriend and say, these are the questions and concerns that I have. But it's only one thing at a time, because it's really easy to lump it all into that. I'm struggling with overwhelm. Okay, let's break down overwhelm of what? Are you afraid that if you go to the bathroom that she's going to go downstairs where the dogs are, if they're kept downstairs, for example? Are you afraid that you're going to have responsibility for her and be home alone with her and not be able to juggle what you need to do with the dogs and juggle what you need to do with her? And I think that goes back to some of those other questions about who's doing the laundry, who's driving the kids to school, how do we do this custody exchange? Those kind of very targeted questions will help you plan your day, because her life, Kenzie, your life is about to change as well. And I know you recognize that intellectually, but emotionally, there's a freight train of emotion just waiting for you when you step in the door and stay there as her stepmom. It's going to change dramatically.
Very good. I like the idea of getting very specific with and getting in our own heads. What is it? What is my concern? Right. And really narrowing that down and then bringing that to a conversation with dad. Right.
Yeah.
I think her taking that approach that she did when she wrote you the letter to say, I'm recognizing these things, that was such a powerful approach. And she nailed so many of them, things to rightly be concerned about. And so again, to have that conversation with her boyfriend to say, these are some of the concerns, that would give her some powerful intel before it happens on the fly, but knowing a little bit in advance. So she's still got a little bit of time left before she moves in, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So those are, I can give you some more if you'd like some more. I can give you some more questions, or we can move on.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to ask was, is there anything else you can offer our listeners who might be struggling to find the sweet spot in their blended family partnerships? So,
Oh yeah, I love the sweet spot part. So say more about it. So what is a sweet spot to you? Tell me what that means to you.
Life is not always going to be easy. Family life is, I love, spelled MESSY. Partnership could also be spelled MESSY. And so it's not always going to be smooth. It's not always going to be easy, but it shouldn't always be a struggle. It shouldn't always be hard. Somewhere in between really, really challenging and really, really perfect, quote unquote, there's a sweet spot.
There is a sweet spot. And Serena, I heard you say comfort too, where they're comfortable, that we get the bed that Goldilocks wanted, right? Okay. A sweet spot. I love the idea of a sweet spot. And I am on a mission to dispute the norm that it takes eons to blend. So the stats will tell you that it takes 7 years to blend. And I'm here to tell you, yeah, that is a long time, right?
That is an annoying stat.
It is an annoying stat. And you go into day one of 7 years saying love is going to solve it all. And I am here to tell you quite honestly that love, that is a sweet spot, but it is not sweet enough to solve all the challenges that you are going to face. You need an action plan. You need to know how it is that you're going to work together. So it definitely takes teamwork to get to that sweet spot. So let's see. I'll offer up a couple of scenarios for people to use so they can talk around these things and then get some more insights about challenges of blending families. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So even though we don't want it to take 7 years, it does take some time. Just like when you go to a new school. So imagine when you went to school for the first time, even when you went to homeschool, or you had a sibling join you in homeschool, or you went to a new school, or you got on a new school bus, or imagine moving into a new house. Regardless of what age that was, the sweet spot was not there. The sweet spot was stolen. And you needed to work to find the sweet spot.
Vanished. Yeah.
Yes, it vanished. That's great. Somebody stole your sweet thing.
That's right. Oh, that's horrible.
That
Yeah.
is horrible. But eventually you make a way because you get to decide, how am I going to respond to this change? So show up curious with an intention to learn that this didn't happen to you, that this is where you are in this state of being. I love that. In how are you being right now? How are you showing up? Show up curious with an intent to learn. And here's the key number one thing you can do for blending families. Focus on what you can control, not on what's out of your control, as in not what's happening in the other home, because you have zero control and zero influence in that home. But you have influence. And as blended families, as a step parent, you have more influence. And just to be clear, you lose a lot of control. So Kenzie's coming into this. She's going to be instant mom and instant stepmom. And there's nothing instant about this. This is not pop your popcorn in the microwave kind of thing. It's you've left it in there too long and your popcorn has burned in the microwave and you're trying to get the smell out of the house, right? So focus on what is in your control, what is in your control. And what happens in your home relates to your values, not your rules. And Amelisa, I know that you are big on this. Don't give a gazillion billion rules. Focus on really who those kids are becoming and how you want to parent them. And so for me, that means you are parenting from your values, or you're creating the home environment that's based on your values, not a bunch of rules. Because nobody likes rules. Rules, schmools, right?
Love that. Love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I don't know what episode that is, but you can probably put that in there and let them know where to go get that information about not too many rules. But I remember listening to that. I've listened to so many of your episodes. They're so good. Let's see.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Unity at the family leadership level. So Kenzie and her boyfriend, they're leading the family. And this is where most blended parents really struggle, that they are not unified. And they have different ideas about parenting. And whether or not you're blended, let's face it, you and the person you're with have different ideas about parenting. So if you are preparing to blend, here are some starter questions. Ask, your child violates curfew. How do you respond? Or ask, what family traditions are important to you? Or you could ask, when you think about your children's mother, what pops up for you? Or when you think about your children's father, what pops up for you? Imagine our blended family 5 years down the road. What do you see? Where do we live? What relationship do we have with these kids? And the last question for preparing to blend that you could ask your significant other is, how would you describe my role as a step parent? What authority and responsibilities do you see for me?
Wow. What an informative list of questions that would be. You could just have such incredible conversations and learn so much and come in. And what I love about Kenzie's questions, for those of you who are already in a blended family, this is going to help as well, I'm sure. And for Kenzie, like, kudos to you again, Kenzie, for asking before you move in. Like that to me, just, and I did tell her in our direct messaging, please don't think too little of yourself because you're, quote, not a mom yet. Yourself, like you're bringing such empowerment to the conversation already just by asking the questions. And those questions, Jen, I mean, it just lays a foundation for that new family, doesn't it? Just has such incredible potential.
Yeah. And I think when you put people in those action questions, when you ask, how will you respond? It
Mhm.
helps you learn a little bit more about how they're going to respond in other situations. And let's face it, when the person that you're living with rolls up the tube of toothpaste the wrong way, this is a problem. So we want to know, ask that question. How are you going to roll up the tube of toothpaste? Do you even roll it up? Wait, do you brush your teeth? You must brush your teeth or we're done.
And let's not even talk about the toilet seat, okay?
Oh gosh. These are important clues about how things are going to go for you.
It's true. Those crumbs on the counter every morning when I get up and you've already gone to work, I'm not down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. A woman after my own heart.
And it wasn't just crumbs. It was everything you used to get your breakfast before you went out the door. Yeah. So those questions also for all of our listeners who are in two-parent families that have not separated and are not blended, those are great questions. I mean, what do you do? I mean, here's Serena with a just turned 1-year-old and an almost 3-year-old. But have you ever thought about the question, hey, honey, so when one of our children breaks curfew, how would you respond? Like, that's a question for all parents to have before there are curfews in place at that age, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Very interesting.
And sometimes, even though, because me and my husband, we just assume that we're on the same page, or we just
Mhm.
assume that we're aligned, and we don't have those conversations. So this is amazing for blended families and just us who are
Same
same
parents
parent
still together
household.
families.
That's
I
right.
don't know how we
That's right.
call those.
So we want to know the
Um,
answer to the question. Will you tell me about that later, Serena? After you ask this question about curfew, I want to know how it's going to go down
yeah.
in your house.
I feel like I would be the more strict parent, and he would be like, "Oh, okay," but we have to have that conversation.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I really love your way of questioning with those like action questions and the questions that are they're real life, but they also really do, as you say, the answers would really show us some insights into who this person is and how we may or may not blend easily and find that sweet spot easily in certain areas, which might then take a little bit more work. What do you think about family meetings? You ever recommend those to your clients and parents?
See, I knew I liked you.
I grew
Absolutely.
up in a blended family and we had family meetings with a talking sticks.
Yes, I believe in family meetings, but I'm going to tell you what not to do. Okay. Don't
Please.
make them hard
Yes.
or stressful.
Or
So
long.
long, that's right, or long. So I'll make a couple of general statements about family meetings. Of course, it's going to be kid dependent. And so I want to speak a little bit to the littles in the audience first, since that is the majority of your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So know how they roll. Can they even sit at a table? If they can't sit at a table, then can you be outside and
Yes.
play on the swing set and have a conversation? So I think
Yes.
go in with very low expectations, especially when you start,
Yes.
so you can
Mm-hmm.
lay the groundwork for the kind of family meetings that you want to have. Now, when I did family meetings, there was this famous dessert that my mom made, and I would make sure that I made it. And the first time it was a huge hit, and the boys were 13 and 9 when we blended. And by the way, there was so much testosterone in my house. I did not know what to do with it because I was a mama of 2 girls. And
Oh
I
my goodness. All of a sudden you've got a dad and 2 boys. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yes, yes. Talk about life changing, and love did not solve it all. Let me
No, it
just be
didn't.
clear.
Mhm. As women, sometimes testosterone just confounds us completely.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Although there is one skill that I admire greatly, which is the fact that we did this in a marriage conference my husband and I went to, and the speaker on stage showed a blank cardboard, a white cardboard. And he said, with his wife next to him, this is really how men can think. They can think of absolutely nothing at all. And of course, as women, that we don't need, we understand intellectually the words, but we cannot process that at all. How does that even happen? Because we're thinking about a gazillion things simultaneously.
All the time.
Yes, yes, indeed. And so it was a shift for me to understand, focus on one thing at a time. So back out when you're playing on the swing set and you're having this family meeting, maybe you can make this famous dessert and take it out there too. I don't know. But I will tell you that when I made it the first time, it was a big hit. But then every time after that, they knew what was coming, and that was not a big hit. Like they wanted the dessert, but they didn't want the conversation to go along with it.
Right.
So your kids will pick up on that very quickly, what you're really all about. You cannot be sneaky with them. But just have one thing that you would like to talk about. So a great thing to talk about is transition day. So transition day, for those of you who are unfamiliar with some of the chaos of blending, is when the kids are with one parent. Transition day is when they go to the other parent's home. So on transition day, that goes back to that consistency of a routine, that you do the same thing every time they come. And it's very low key. And it's also the day that you set yourself up for success. So you avoid doing this Disneyland bonanza of, oh, you're here, we're so excited, when deep in your heart, you're actually really not. You're petrified and anxious, and you don't even know how the week's going to go because the last time they were here, it didn't go so well, and you're fighting with your husband and blah, blah, blah. You've got all this stuff.
Right.
But setting the transition day is really important. These are the norms that we do. Now, my kids are older now. So an older kid, I'll ask him, what do you need to be successful this week? So in an attempt to avoid the dire need to have a significant stockpile of aluminum foil for the science project and learn about it right before the bus is coming that morning, I'm hoping that asking that question in advance is going to set us up for success. So we have the aluminum foil on hand before we're walking out the door. So again, it is definitely age dependent on what you can have. But that question has been, I stumbled on it. So, there's no bonus point for me here. I stumbled on asking this question, but what do you need to be successful this week versus how are you? Because let's face it, kids, especially boys, how are you? I'm good.
One of the things I know about that question in particular is that especially when children arrive from anywhere and from their other parent's home, is a big transition. And coming home from school or daycare is a big transition, but from the other parent's home is even bigger because there's a whole nother life going on over there, right? So here in this transition, well, anytime, how are you can put a child on edge. It can feel like a weight of, oh, now I have to figure out how I am, and if they're upset or if they've had a hard day or if they've had 30 million things going on that day or that week, how do they even answer that question? It's not the best question to ask. One of the things I always coach my parents is when you first greet your child, just simply say, it's so good to see you.
Yeah.
And, come in for a hug or a touch or whatever is comfortable at that time with that blended family. But that how are you question, avoid.
Yeah. That's such a good, and even when you asked that question, I felt the room shift for me. Even though you weren't actually asking me that question, I felt the room shift. So that was really, really good.
Nice. So family meetings, just to wrap up with that, they're a good idea, but you were saying, keep them short and sweet and workable for your particular children, depending on their age, their personality types, whether they can sit still. Outside is a really good place to have a meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
Even on a family walk. When children are moving is a great time to have deeper conversations that need to be
That's
had.
right. And for Kenzie too. I mean, she has so many dogs to choose from, evidently, so they could all go on a walk together, and that would help set that pattern too, that she's invited and included, and get a little bit of a sense of how she's going to behave with those dogs when her dad is present too. So that could be very good intel. So what a great idea. Go for a dog walk.
Well, I feel so blessed to have you here with us, Jen, and to be sharing your wealth of knowledge about blending families boldly and beautifully with all of our listeners. I myself am from separated families, and I will share with our listeners, I shared this before we started recording. When I was in grade 4, it was Mother's Day, just prior to Mother's Day, and we were all making Mother's Day cards. And the kids started taunting me because I was making 2. And they said, "Why are you making 2 Mother's Day cards? That you can't, it's not even possible to have 2 moms."
Mhm.
And that is the difference of what we're looking at in 50 years.
Mhm.
Is, now, I don't know how many is it now from separated families. I
Oh, at
mean,
least half the marriages
at
now.
least half, right? 50% of the population.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that you're a bit more unusual in a classroom if you have your 2 same parents,
Unfortunately, that's correct. Yeah,
right?
for
Yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah,
what the work that you are doing in the world, Jen, is so needed because of those statistics. So thank you
yeah.
for
You're
that.
welcome.
And thank you so much for joining us. And I'll hand it over to Serena to wrap us up here. But we just
Wonderful.
really do feel very blessed by you being here.
Yes, thank you
Me
so
as well.
much,
Thank
Jen.
you.
So, to wrap it up, we just have 3 questions that we ask all of our guests that come on just to get to know you a little better. And number 1 is, what's one thing that surprised you about becoming a parent and a step parent?
I thought about this one a little bit. So, as a parent, I had read all the books, What to Expect When You're Expecting. I had listened to all the stuff. I don't think I was listening to podcasts then, although I highly recommend them now for the obvious reason. I think they're really powerful. But I was a clueless wonder. And so I was surprised that I couldn't apply the book learning to my
Mm,
experiences. And so I needed to
mm.
experience it. And let's see, as a step parent, I felt schnookered. I was thinking, how do I describe
Mm.
that? I
Schnookered is
felt
a good
schnookered
word.
because I thought all of my experiences in my first marriage that they had made me an expert, right? But I was not the expert in this family. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't know what to do with all that testosterone.
Mm.
So I was shocked at all of the transition. And I had a bit of an identity crisis, which you alluded to in the intro,
Yeah.
because I
Mhm.
lost myself. I lost sight of who I was in the hurt and the hard of blending families.
Mm.
Mm.
Wow.
But you survived and you came out so bold.
Here I am. Yes, yes. In full disclosure, when I started my podcast, I was one angry, pissed off stepmom, and God used that to move me. I'm just being honest.
I
Wow.
love
it
that. I
it
love
Wow.
wasn't
honesty.
working. Okay, so don't listen to the early episodes. Listen to the later episodes. When I'm calm, cool, and collected, where it's all good.
Oh, I
All
love
right.
that.
Number 2 is, what does being a nurturing parent and step parent look like to you?
It goes back to the questions, acknowledging where Kenzie is, for example, and saying, okay, this is where we're starting, and asking good coaching questions. And regardless of your kids' ages, you can ask them coaching questions. So, a big hot tip is if your question starts with why, that may not be the best question because why puts you
Mm.
on guard. So, ask what or how questions that are age appropriate
Oh,
to your
wait.
kids.
Can you give us a quick example?
Okay.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I could say, I would not say to my stepson, why did you forget your stuff at your mom's house?
Right.
And
Mm.
it goes back to that other question that I said, what do you need for success? Well, I need to go back to my mom's house and get my backpack because I forgot it. So have some grace on your kids because they're going to forget a
Mm.
ton of stuff at the other house because they just are trying to figure it out like you are.
I just want to
Wow.
say to parents too, my whole thing about children nowadays, when my mom left the family home, and soon after my stepmom moved in, who I still call stepmom, by the way, who divorced my dad many, many, many years ago, and she remarried, and she has other children from her second marriage. So, but I still call her mom. It was
Mm.
very, very. I had her from age 7 to age 12 as my live-in mom. Anyway, but now, and we stayed in one house. we lived in one house and we went out to visit the other parent. Children now who live in one home and then live in another home and then live in this home and then live in that home back. Like, I just ask parents to think about how you would feel as an adult living in a completely different environment with different food, different rules, different expectations, different energy in the home. I always bring us back to that in the podcast. Put yourself in their position. And like you just said, Jen, give them some grace.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
hard.
A lot of grace. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because they're traumatized. I think we overlook
Mhm.
that, but they have experienced the loss of a family. So that is trauma right there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so Kenzie's coming in, maybe not traumatized, but she's coming into a family, into a child who has experienced trauma, and she's going to need to heal from that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So grace, that's a beautiful way to be nurturing. I love that word grace anyway. Thank you.
And lastly, for all of our listeners who are like, who is Jen? Where'd she come from? She's so amazing. I love listening to her. Where can I listen to more?
Yes.
Where can
Yes.
all of our listeners find you now that they're probably like, I love Jen?
Oh, thanks for that. So, when you're looking for a podcast on step families, you might just go to Google and say Step Family Podcast, and that's where you can find everything. Stepfamilypodcast.com. That is the easiest way you can find everything there. And I'd love to welcome you on the website, and I'd love to hear from you. So tell me hello.
Nice. 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 Love it. Stepfamilypodcast.com. Okay, listeners, we hope you go and find Jen. We hope you listen and subscribe to her Bold Stepmoms. Is that your podcast name?
Bold and Blended Stepmoms. Yes.
Bold and Blended Stepmoms podcast.
Thank you.
Yes. Beautiful.
And everything will be in the show notes as well for you to just go into the details and click to find Jen.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Well, thank you again. And like we always like to say as we say goodbye, we love you.
Isn't Jen just amazing? I know you love her. So if you want to get more of her, you can just go into our show notes and she'll be a click away. Anywhere that you can follow her, get more information will be in the show notes. So make sure you go follow her. And so just to recap our advice for Kenzie, it is to create a list of your specific concerns. So when you are creating this list for each concern, think of one aspect that you're worried about so that when you do have a conversation with your boyfriend, everything is clear and to the point. Number 2 is then have that discussion with your boyfriend and ask the questions that Jen brought to the table, which were some amazing, juicy conversations that we should all be having as couples. Whatever parenting duo you are, whether you're a step family or if you are just parents, me and my husband need to have a lot of these conversations. So some of the juicy questions are, what are the routines that are important to your kids? And sometimes I know that there are certain routines that are very important to the kids, but my husband is just unaware of them. So it's important for me to speak up and make sure that that is clear to my husband, that I expect him to navigate his day around our kids' routines. Another one was, how would you describe my role as a stepmom? And this is a great question for Kenzie to ask her boyfriend so that she's clear about what he's expecting from her. And then number 3 is to go listen to episode number 69 on boundaries. Thank you so much, Jen, for referring to this episode. It is a great episode, and I do suggest if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. I know I can listen to it over and over and over again because some boundaries are something that take practice and it's hard to learn. So some reminders that I also wrote down were to show up curious and with intent to learn. And this was a great one that Jen said. Focus on what you can control. And another great question was, what do you need to be successful this week? Which seemed like such a game-changing question to help and be supportive of any stepchild. So thank you so much, Jen. Thanks for Kenzie, and thank you, mamas, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Before you go, mamas, if you enjoyed this episode, here are 3 ways you can show us some support. Number 1 is leave us a quick review on Apple Podcast. It really helps other mamas find our podcast so that we can help more families, and that's what our mission is. Number 2 is you can send this episode to somebody you know that will benefit from it, or any other episode that you enjoyed. Just send it to them, say, hey, thought you'd like this, and they're gonna think that's really sweet. And number 3 is you can become a Patreon member today for as little as $1 a month. It really helps, and we just wanted to say thank you to our existing Patreons. Thanks for keeping this going. Thank you for being so generous and allowing us to continue doing this work so that we can help the families that we are helping. We really appreciate it. All right, take care, mamas.